right, 6th grade, so we are continuing to work on our guitars today, our monochromatic guitars. So now that you've painted your blue shapes, now you're going to start mixing your tints and your shades. So we're gonna start by mixing our tints. We're actually gonna end up making 2 tints and 1 shade. So you'll start by making a tint that is super light. So you're gonna start with white. And you're gonna add just a little bit of blue. Might even need more white. This is gonna be your lightest tint. So take almost all of your white and add just a little bit of blue. Then, just like we did with our regular blue by itself, you're just gonna pick about 4 spaces. Depending on how many spaces you have, obviously if you have a lot more spaces than me, you're gonna need to paint more spaces. But I'm gonna pick about 4 spaces and paint them with my lightest color. Remember, go right up against your lines. Try to make them as straight as possible. And then it's way easier to just fill in after that. Now, something I like to do is I like to make the colors that are in my guitar be way different than the colors next to it. So I think I'm gonna try to make this color super, super light, and then make this color and this shape super, super dark. So that way our guitar really stands out. So I'm gonna make this shape super light. And I'll show you guys again. I'm gonna do it all the way. I'm gonna just outline the whole shape first. So since this is the blue by itself, I think next to this one, I'm going to put the super light blue, so that way, again, it stands out. I don't want to put 2 that are super close to each other next to each other on the guitar. It's not as big of a deal if it's in the background, because we just really want your guitar to stand out. So try to have some pretty stark contrast. Make sure you're making your lines super nice and clean. On your first shape, it's not that big of a deal, so it's not super, super straight right here. But when I do this shape, I'm gonna have to make sure that I make that line super, super straight. So like right here, this line is super important because I've already painted both shapes on both sides. So I need to make sure that I'm making it super, super straight. If you are not doing that, I will make you go back over those lines and make them straight. So you might as well try to do it the first time. All right. You know what? I might paint one more, this little shape. So I washed my brush. You actually don't even need to wash your brush because you're just gonna dip into the same colors. If you have any of this blue left over, there's no need to waste it. You can always just add more blue, but I think I'm gonna need some more paint just to be able to fill up all these spaces. So now I'm going to mix a darker blue than the one I just made. So I need more blue this time. So I'm gonna go ahead and test this to make sure. I think that's pretty good. I think that's a pretty good in between this color and this color, right? So I'm just gonna pick about 4 or 5 more spaces, fill those in. What you do need to do now is kind of keep in mind that you are only doing two more colors. So it's this color and then you're only doing one more color. So if I have these two spaces right next to each other, I'm probably going to need to do one of these two colors because I'm only, or one of these two spaces because I'm only doing two more colors, and I want to make sure that at the end I don't end up having two shapes right next to each other that are the same shade. So keep that in mind when you're starting to get close to the end here. So for here, and here, and here, and here, I have all these shapes. I can't paint this one this color because right here is this color. So I think I'm gonna have to paint a bunch of these little shapes with this color. If your colors are too close to the same, you're gonna have to mix it and make it different. So like if this was still too light, if this was still too close to this color, I would have to mix it to make it look different. I would have to add more blue to make it darker if it was still too light. So make sure that's what you're doing. I'm gonna do my last, oh right, I need to do one up here too. I'm gonna do this one and then one of those two. If you see any streakiness in any of your colors, you might want to go back over and do a second layer. I might get some more of my blue by itself because I'm seeing a little bit of streakiness in there and go back over it. But now that I've completely finished that, I have these spaces left to do my, oops, I see this tiny little space that needs to be this color. But now I'm ready to do my shade. Okay, so black paint is very different than white paint. White paint, you need a lot of white paint to make something lighter. Black paint, you only need a little bit of black paint to make something darker, and you can always add more. So I say start with a little bit, and then if you need more, you can come back and add more. Now blue's already pretty dark in the first place. So it might take a little more black to notice it get darker. It's definitely getting darker. It's like a midnight blue right now. I'm just trying to mix it all together. All right. Now I'm gonna test it next to the original blue to make sure it's darker. Is that dark enough? You know what, guys? I might make it a little bit darker. I just don't want there to be any question that it's darker than that blue. Don't add too much black because we obviously don't want it to be black. We just want it to be a dark midnight blue color. There we go. Now this color you probably will have to do a couple of layers of. For some reason the darker the color, it just looks a little bit more streaky. So just kind of keep that in mind. Let it dry a little bit and then you will probably have to do another coat or another layer. All right, guys, so if it helps you, before you start painting today, you can go through with a pencil and super lightly kind of number your shapes before you start painting. So that way it'll help you make sure you never are leaving two spaces next to each other by the end. So if I went through and I numbered all of the light blue, I would make sure all of those were number 2s, and I would go through and paint over all my number 3s with this medium blue, and then my number 4s would be the deep blue. If that'll help you to go through and number it first before you start painting, that's fine. You can do that. I'm gonna wait for this to dry a little bit, and then I'm gonna do a second coat definitely over my deepest blues, and then probably over these blues. My 2 light blues might be okay without going over a second coat, but we'll just have to see. Next time we will add our final details to these. It'll just be a couple little finishing details, and then we'll be finished with these. So, all right, let's get started.